Behavior is communication. Behavior is telling us something. If somebody's smiling, that's behavior. You know that person is feeling good, right? If somebody's throwing a chair across the room, that's behavior.
True.
They're telling you, this is not working. I am having trouble. I need help. But the kids don't have the word to ask for that, or they have asked for it. Like my son was saying, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And nobody's listening. They're saying, you have to, you have to, you have to. And they're kind of backed into a corner like, I don't know what else to do.
Welcome to Vulnerability Muscle, the inspiring podcast challenging norms and helping you redefine vulnerability as a strength. I'm your host, Reggie D. Ford. Each episode of Vulnerability Muscle dives into a variety of topics such as mental health, social issues, and mindset shifts. We explore the power of vulnerability and fostering meaningful connections, healing, building resilience, and promoting personal growth. Sometimes these conversations are uncomfortable, but good workouts often are. So join us and flex that vulnerability muscle. Welcome to this episode of Vulnerability Muscle. I'm your host, Reggie D. Ford. And today with me, I have another special guest, another MAPP, Masters of Applied Positive Psychology at the University of Pennsylvania student who is in my cohort, who is a fantastic human being. This is Joni Corn. Welcome, Joni. How are you doing?
Thanks, Reggie. I am so glad to be here talking to you. I'm doing good, and thanks for asking me to chat with you.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm excited about this because you're one of those people who I see as having such a clear passion for what you do and for who you do it for. You blend such a unique experience of you've practiced law, you've worked in the nonprofit space and raising kids, homeschooling. Did you homeschool two of your kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To my kids from kindergarten through 12th grade,
Oh
all the way
my
through.
goodness. Like that alone is like we could talk all day long about that in itself.
Yeah.
But you've turned your work toward helping parents and kids with ADHD, coaching them through that life and in those experiences. And what stands out to me most is just how human centered you are in the approach. Like looking at your background, you have this strength based learning, you have trauma informed care. There is so much nonviolent communication, which I think is so crucial in the space, especially when you think about just how powerful our words are, how powerful it is when kids are developing, and how literal we can take certain things, even if we're not trying to be um, have any malintent behind those things. And so I think that is so crucial, and you do such a good job. And now you're utilizing this program, Masters of Applied Positive Psychology, to bring that to your parents and your students and kids. And so I'm just so impressed by it with all you do.
Thanks, Reggie. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Right back at you.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
I got you.
When before we get deeper into who is Joni Corn, I got three questions that I like to ask.
Okay.
All right. The first one is, what comes to mind when you hear the word vulnerability?
Good question. Uh, well, I think that vulnerability is where all genuine connection comes from. So I love creating the space for others to be vulnerable so they can, you know, have that connection. And I think that it always starts with me being vulnerable.
Hmm.
So I try and allow myself to be vulnerable first, to be able to create that space to have a genuine connection with somebody
Mm, I
and
love
growth.
that.
I think
And
growth is in vulnerability.
yes, you just reminded me. So I have to share this because it just came up. I saw it on Instagram, but it was a quote by Deja Ray. To be vulnerable is to live fully. Yes, your heart might break. Yes, you might fail. Yes, things might not unfold the way you hoped. But vulnerability doesn't make you more susceptible to pain. It makes you more susceptible to life. And life will inevitably hold shades of disappointment. I thought that was so beautiful because it's life. And
That's
you
absolutely
spoke about modeling it first, which is one of the it is the first pillar of the vulnerability muscle framework, which I've developed. But I love that. I love that. So
Yeah, yeah, we have to create
um
the space.
yeah, the next question is, what is something that you do to relax, to decompress, to unwind when you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed?
Yeah, well, the very first thing I do is breathe
Mhm.
deeply and slowly. I use my breath a lot, actually, if I'm
Yeah.
really stressed. Like if I'm going into a meeting and or I'm about to do a presentation, I can be sitting there waiting to be called, and I feel myself, uh-oh, and I just breathe really deeply. I try and get outside. I go for a walk. I talk to somebody that I love. I'll call my sister. I'll pet my dog. I
Yes.
connect. Actually, I connect. That's what I do with
There you
myself
go.
and with people I love.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Petting the dog is so important. Like, I don't know where I would be without my dog right now. Lastly, what is one of your favorite childhood memories?
I love these questions. I really do, because you're asking me things that, like, I don't sit down and think about, and it's fun to think about them. Um, I have lots of great memories with my sisters. So I'm one of 5 kids, super close to my 2 sisters. I'm, like, sandwiched by my sisters, and I have lots of great memories, when I'm little. My younger sister wasn't born yet, really. With my older sister, I was probably, like, 5, 6, 7, and my mom would put us to bed, and it was still daylight out. She had this, she would put us to bed at, like, clockwork at a certain time, regardless of the fact that the sun was still up. And it was so hard to go to sleep. And we were supposed to just lay there quietly and go to sleep. And so my sister and I would try to be really quiet until, um, my mom went downstairs, whatever, so we could stay up and talk. And so some of my favorite memories are staying up late at night and chatting with my sister. And this one time we would always fall asleep. We wanted to stay up until it got dark, which was like an hour later, and we couldn't. So we decided one night we were going to put ourselves in really uncomfortable positions. So I was like, my bed was next to the wall. So I laid on my bed, but like only my head was on my bed and my whole body was like up the wall. And I was like, oh, there's no way I can fall asleep like this. Well, I totally fell asleep.
Oh my
Well,
goodness.
what's that?
That's so funny.
My sister didn't fall asleep. She was so uncomfortable because she laid there for like an hour in this horrible position. I just fell asleep and went, like relaxed on my bed. And yeah, we didn't get to talk that night, but it was really fun, fun things. I'll tell you one
Ah,
more about that. She did this thing where I love my sister, but she has a wicked sense of humor. And she told me that if you hypnotize somebody, you can't like wake them up. Don't wake them up. You have to wake them up a very specific way because if you just wake them up, they could die. And I was little and I still kind of believe things telling me I'm pretty gullible, but I believed everything. And
yeah.
so I was like, okay, great. So then I had this little thing and she's like, so let's try it. So I hypnotize her and she pretends to be hypnotized. And then I'm like, it worked. It worked. And then I couldn't wake her up because I was going to kill her. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like totally panicked. And she fell off the bed laughing. That was absolutely hysterical. I always wanted to kill her. I was so scared. Yeah, that's my sister.
Oh my goodness, that sounds so much fun. Like, you and your sister sound like y'all, like, had a blast growing
We
up.
did. It was
And oh, you reminded me of something when you were talking about just staying up late and talking. Like, those are some of the best chats
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with siblings that were near me, but my cousins were about my age, and so I remember just being with my cousins, especially one in particular, Marquez, and we would lay in bed and we talk, and it'd be like, "Are you up? Yep. What do you wanna talk about? Girls." And it just like, that was every weekend, and it was so funny, so,
Yeah.
oh, those were some good conversations. That's so
Yeah.
sweet.
And going back to vulnerability, it's interesting because late night in your own home, in your own bed, it's dark, you have somebody next to you in the room. That's a perfect space for vulnerability, right?
Yes.
You're
Yeah,
psychologically safe, you're with somebody cares about you, and all sorts of things can come up, and yeah,
yeah.
it's a beautiful space. It just feels good.
It is. I'm curious about just the rest of the upbringing of Joni Corn. Can you paint us a picture? Where were you born?
Yeah,
And just a little bit of background about that.
yeah, sure. Um, I grew up in the country, so I grew up. My parents owned a camp, so we lived on the campground. So it was a big camp, like 200 acres, like a just giant camp, and we had a really old house. And like I said, I'm one of five, so I'm the fourth down. Like I was four out of five, and we it was just a really fun way to grow up. Like we were outside all the time, riding bikes, and our town was very pretty rural, and we had sheep farms, and our milk was delivered in a glass bottle, and we had farms all over. Like it was a farming town, and it was just easy and relaxed and full of nature. Uh, it was beautiful. It was really
Yeah.
beautiful. I'm close with my siblings, and I have lots of cousins. I love that you talked about cousins. 'Cause I have lots of cousin memories, and it was just a really nice way to grow up. It was just a nice, low keyed,
Yeah.
um, very in the moment. Like
Mhm.
present with nature and together, and lots of togetherness.
I'm glad you said that because as you were describing it, I could like picture that the peace and the presence of it all. Of like I've only lived in Nashville my entire life, and not that a huge it's a city, but it's not a huge city, but it has grown, and even growing up, it still had city feel, and the peace and quiet and the serenity that you just described, I haven't experienced except
Yeah,
when I go camping or go
yeah,
to different places. And, there you I was just at a school recently reading my book, and this just showed the difference in worlds because I grew up how I grew up, and these kids are growing up differently. It was in a rural part of Tennessee, and this one kid I was asking kids about their times that they have persevered, like something that there was a challenge and they overcame that challenge. And this one kid was saying, "When I tended to the sheep." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, when I was first starting off, I was terrified and I was scared of the sheep and I didn't like it licking me and I didn't like it. And then I kept going and I was just like, I was holding in laughter. I was holding in like this big, I was smiling, but like I had an even bigger smile of joy inside of me of just like how beautiful this was
yeah,
because this kid has developed a strength and can recognize that connected to getting over hard things, and it
yeah.
was so
Well,
beautiful. Yeah.
asking the question helps
Oh,
him
yeah.
really solidify it. Like, oh,
Mhm.
I have done hard things. I can do hard
Absolutely.
things.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, that
yeah,
and I'm glad, like, I love going to different parts of the country, rural parts, that are just so different from my experience because it gives me insight onto us collectively as humans, how we are somewhat different, but we are so, so similar. We're
yeah,
so similar,
yeah.
and, I love just learning from kids especially because they have such they have such wild imaginations.
They do, and they don't have all those protective layers, right?
Mhm.
So it's just really beautiful.
Can I
Yeah.
that like, okay, so going from I read to what, K through 4 no, K through yeah, 4th grade, and you see the layers added on with
Yeah.
each grade. So, like, the kindergartens are just kids. I don't even wanna call them wild, they're just kids. But then you get to the 4th graders, and they're, like, buttoned up and well behaved, and I'm like, "Oh, we've
Yeah.
stripped them of so much of what makes them great already at that age."
Yeah, don't get me started on school.
Well, let's get you started on school. How do you feel about it?
Well, I think there's some great schools, some
Mhm,
really
for
great
sure.
schools, and some really great teachers. I think that as an institution, it needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
I think that, just I think that, well, I can tell you, when my son went to college, one of the first things that one of his teachers reached out to me, and one of the first things that she said was, one of the things I noticed that's different about your son is he doesn't have all those layers. He doesn't have all these
Mm,
protective layers that I
mm,
see the other kids coming in with. And I really attribute that to not being in a traditional school environment. So when this same son was in, I put him in preschool for about 2 months, and I was in the classroom with him. I wasn't really allowed to interact with him, but I was in the classroom with him, and I watched his self-esteem and his self-worth plummet.
mm,
I watched him dissolving in front of my very eyes.
mm.
He was he has ADHD. He's a square peg in a round hole in a traditional classroom. And the effects of it they were devastating for him. And he started to get frustrated and angry, and like his personality was changing because he was so frustrated and confused, right? And
Mhm.
was feeling embarrassed and like all of these feelings he didn't know what to do with. So it was a gift for me that I was able to observe it and realize this environment's not going to work.
Wow.
And I saw other kids like have similar things happen to them. And parents talk to me now about the things that are happening for them. So this is something that's I've heard over and over again over the years, but it was actually a gift for me to be able to see it because I never would have known.
Mhm.
I wouldn't have known why he was getting so angry or why he was getting physical or I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't have been able to tell me.
Right. Because most parents, what they're getting is a report from a teacher
Right.
at a conference or through a, email sent home, and you take the adult side most of the time, or you listen to your child, you try to, but you don't truly experience what they're experiencing. And to watch a child's self-worth and self-esteem just fall and fall, oh,
Yeah.
I
It
bet
was
that was heartbreaking.
it really was. And then I would have the teacher say to me afterwards, nothing happened. Like, I don't know why he reacted that way. Nothing happened. And I was like, I can tell you exactly what happened.
Hmm.
I know exactly what happened. I was observing. Like,
Explain what that describe what that looked like, or what confined him in a way to make that come out of him.
what confined him, like what was happening in the
What
class,
was happening in that moment?
right? Um, okay, here's one example. Everyone was doing an art project, and one at a time they sat with the teacher and drew a picture. So she called them up one at a time. And he did not like the he had like fine motor issues. So like picking up a pencil or a pen or coloring, he didn't want to go anywhere near it because it's really hard and he was didn't enjoy it at all. So she called up one student at a time. They sat with her and drew their picture, and she called him last because she knew that he doesn't like to do it. So she called him up. He sat down and he drew a picture, and it was very rudimentary. And she said, "Don't you want to do this? And don't you want to add a sun?" And he's like, "No." "Don't you want to add a mountain?" "No." "Don't you want to add this? Don't you want to add that?" And he's like, "No, no, no." And she's like, "Everyone else drew
Mm,
more on their paper.
mm,
You need to add something." So my little 4-year-old is like, okay, trying to do what he's being asked to do, but like not being able to meet these expectations. He took his pen or crayon, whatever it was, and he made like one line on the paper. And he said, "That's my picture."
wow.
And she says to me afterwards, like, he's being so difficult and he's being, um, obstinate and he's being this and he's being that, like a whole litany of negative description. And I said, none of that is happening.
Mm,
None of it. He is actually trying to do what he's telling you over and over again. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good. And you're not listening. So he's
right.
trying to meet your expectations. That's how he could do it.
Wow. Wow. And
So, yeah,
we don't see em- kids don't have the language to communicate exactly how they feel oftentimes. And so it comes out in that behavior.
yeah,
And you were able to witness his behavior change in that moment because he didn't enjoy what was happening at that time.
yeah.
And so, like, how do
we as adults or teachers or caregivers, what are some of the signs that we can notice in a child, especially a child who has ADHD,
Yeah.
uh, to know that they're signaling to us much more than just bad behavior or what we would deem bad behavior?
Right. Well, it's a whole mindset shift around behavior. It's not about controlling behavior and changing behavior, because that's about controlling a person and changing a person.
Hmm.
Behavior is communication. Behavior is telling us something. Somebody's smiling, that's behavior. You know that person is feeling good, right? If somebody's throwing a chair across the room, that's behavior.
True.
They're telling you, this is not working. I am having trouble. I need help. But the kids don't have the word to ask for that, or they have asked for it. Like my son was saying, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And nobody's listening. They're saying, you have to, you have to, you have to. Right.
Hmm.
And they're kind of backed into a corner, like, I don't know what else to do. And at that point, they're in their survival brain.
Hmm.
So their survival brain is either going to tell them, stop talking and shut down. It's going to tell them to run away. It's going to tell them to pick up the chair and throw it. Right. It's behavior telling the adult, this child needs your help.
Mm.
This child is struggling with something. Let's get curious. Let's connect. Let's make them feel psychologically safe. Let's see them and hear them and listen to them and believe them. Believe their experience. You might not agree with it, and it might be not your interpretation. They're telling you their experience. The
Yep.
only way to move them forward and back into a psychologically safe space where they can actually use their thinking skills is if you believe them and connect with them and help them solve whatever stumbling block is clearly in the way, or else we wouldn't have the behavior.
You bring up such a good point about a child being in their survivor brain and how if they are in the space where they can feel safe, that leads to the thinking, the cognitive skills that we know we can get out of them. But when they're in that survival state, they can't access that readily. Can you explain that? And I know we've talked about polyvagal theory. Can you explain that to folks to help them understand? Like, it's it blows my mind that we as a society as a whole haven't tied the two together. That safety means like I'm more open to learning and more open to being creative and all the other things. But can you explain that?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Well, when we have pretty primitive brains. So like initially there was a saber-toothed tiger and our brain would access fight or flight in order to survive, right? Get away from that saber-tooth tiger or fight it if you have a spear, right? You have to focus on saber-tooth tiger, cannot pay attention to anything else, right? Nothing else in your environment will come in while you are dealing with the challenge of the saber-tooth tiger. Your life's on the line. Our brains, when we have a challenge, can slip into that exact same mode. It may not be really a saber-tooth tiger, but as far as our brains are considered, it is a saber-tooth tiger. So I don't see anything else. I can't learn anything because learning is here when I'm relaxed and calm and I'm here, not when I'm in my survival brain. So I can't take in any other information. I can't, nothing. I have completely narrowed focus. And when when we can connect and calm that reflex that we have to protect ourselves and survive, then we broaden our perspective. Like we literally, the research shows, Barbara Fredrickson's research shows our peripheral vision actually expands. We see things in our environment that we didn't see before,
Hmm.
right? We can take it all in to be able to begin to solve our problems
Hmm.
and collaborate and do all the things that the adult is asking us to do.
Yes. Oh,
Right? We can access the skills that we do have in order to meet the expectations better. Like
beautifully
anybody.
stated. So beautifully stated.
Yeah. So that's
Did
like
what?
polyvagal without saying the word polyvagal in a nutshell.
Yeah. Yes. That's so good. I love how you communicated that. Was that moment in the classroom, was that the moment where you were like, I'm gonna homeschool my children and do it a different way?
Yeah, pretty much it was. Well, I mean, it was yes, it was part of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my son kept saying to me every morning, I don't even know where he got the language from. I don't want to go in there. I don't want to go in there. Now, he started out wanting to go in. He started out
Mm.
super excited very quickly. He was, I don't want to go in there. You can teach me everything I need to know. You can homeschool me. You can teach me everything I need to know. And he kept saying that to me every morning. And he's very verbal and easy to work with. And I can always like kind of reason with him. I reasoned him back into the classroom. I wasn't listening. And I was reasoned him back into the classroom every morning. And one morning he said, I am not going back into that classroom again. And I talked him back into the classroom. And about 10 minutes later, the teacher came out and said, he cannot be in this classroom. He
Mm.
cannot be in here today. And I was like, well, what happened? He walked up to a child and he hit him. It was totally unprovoked. Nothing happened. Like, we can't have this in the classroom. No, he didn't. He's 4 years old. He didn't like wallop the kid. He just. And so, and she walked away and he's just standing there next to me.
Mm.
So I got down to his level and I actually asked the teacher, who was it that he hit? And I knew before she even answered who he was that he hit. And I'll tell you how I knew. So I got down to him next to his level and I said, what's going on? And he said, I told you I'm not going back into that classroom. So I said over and over to him before that, always use your words, don't use your hands, use your words. And here he was using his words with me over and over and over again. And I
Yeah,
was not listening.
not
So he had no
listening.
choice
Wow.
but to use his hands. And the
Wow.
child that he hit, the very first day of school, this child came up to him, got about an inch from his face, and screamed at the top of his lungs.
Mm.
Now, my son has sensory integration dysfunction, so
Mm.
he's insanely sound sensitive. It's like a
Mm.
knife going through him if
Mm.
sounds are loud. And I watched him and I couldn't do anything about it. I was just sitting in the corner. I couldn't do anything. And he stood there like shaking. His entire nervous system was shattered.
Mm.
So if he had to pick one student
Yeah.
he was going to have to smack to get out of that classroom, that was going to be the student. And it was.
Wow, wow. You're a great storyteller, Joni.
Oh,
Like, let me tell you that. And
thanks.
you brought up some things about the sensory being overloaded by the sound and things like that. What are some other common traits or things that a person who lives with ADHD will experience that someone else may not?
Yeah, lots of things. I'm going to start that off by saying a couple of minutes ago, I said, believe your child. And now I'm going to say, believe your child. There's always a reason.
Mm.
If you're watching as the adult and you're like, nothing happened, there is always a reason. Something is always bothering them. And it might have started in the morning and just built as the day went on. So that's the thing with ADHD is that now I'm going to talk globally about ADHD, but every brain is different. Every
Mm.
ADDer is different, right? There are common threads and there are lots of common threads. And that being said, it's really important for a parent to understand their child's lived experience with ADHD because it's unique to that child because the child has a unique brain. So ADDers have like a more limited amount of bandwidth to,
When you say so, are those interchangeable when you say ADD and ADHD?
yes, they're totally
Okay.
interesting. Well, yes and no. It used to be two different things. ADD, ADHD, the hyperactivity piece was, made it different, but now it's not. It's all
Mm.
ADHD.
Okay. I
Some
learned something
kids
new
may
today.
have more hyperactivity, but the thing is, hyperactivity actually could be externally seen or internally seen.
Mhm.
So I might not look hyperactive, but my brain, oh boy, oh boy, is hyperactive, right? So that's why it's just all one thing now.
Got you.
But I try to say ADHD. ADD is easier to say, but so it's all the same. So thank you for
Mhm.
pointing that out.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you.
but there's like limited bandwidth before they wear out and their capability to manage stress and situations just is shorter, right? And so there's all different aspects of ADHD. So I'm trying to like compartmentalize it, but knowing when your bandwidth needs to be recharged and knowing when your child's bandwidth needs to be recharged is really important. So, for example, I have two boys. My older one has ADHD, my younger one does not. There's 3-year difference. When we would sit down to do like math, for example, my older one who has ADHD could do 20 minutes of math. And at minute 21, his head would explode.
Yeah.
He was done. Like, not,
Yeah.
I mean, it was bad. It was just bad. So I would make sure that we did not hit minute 21. And at like minute 19, I'm like, okay, let's take a break. Seriously. My younger one, who does not have ADHD, I could say, "Oh, just one more, you're almost done. You're almost done. Like, just let's sit for another 10 minutes. I could do that with him. And he could summon the resources. But when ADDers resources are depleted, they are depleted.
Mhm. Yeah.
And bad things will happen because they don't have anything left to give.
Wow.
So
It
that's
makes me think of kind of like burnout. Like when you think about burnout and just being
perfect.
overwhelmed with so much stuff, when you talk about the hyperactivity, whether it be in their actions or in their brain, they are being overwhelmed with stuff
Perfect.
nonstop.
Great
Wow.
analogy. That's exactly what's happening. Exactly what's happening. They're burning out. And they're burning out much faster on the inside than you can see on the outside. And they're burning out much faster than other people would burn out. So by the time a child gets to school, um, he has to use many executive function skills, right? Management skills in order to get to school. So he has to, so many things. He has to get dressed. He has to select his clothes. He has to get up out of bed. He has to, um, you know, decide what he's going to wear. He has to find his socks and find his shoes and get his book bag and eat breakfast. And there are so many executive functions involved that usually there's multiple meltdowns before the child even gets out the door, right? And that's what I work with parents on a lot is like, how can we calm the morning routine? How can we reduce the expectations? How can we support the executive functions that are being called upon? How can we use connection and humor to fortify the child in the moment? Because those things create all the feel good, hormones. They create serotonin and they create just all the things that you need to
Yeah.
be able to do the thing. Connection helps build those things. So how do we build that into the morning routine so they can actually get out the door not hysterical and with a screaming fight, right? But a lot of them don't get out the door without a fight, and they show up at the door of their classroom with this much bandwidth left for a whole day of being told what to do and how to do it and not being able to meet expectations.
Mm. Wow. Wow. That's powerful. One thing I really appreciate about what you've shared is that no person with ADHD is the same, right? That we're all very different. And I think when I hear neurodivergence, sometimes I cringe just based off that term because we have these, typical brains, these normal brains, and then we have these other brains. But like everybody's brain is different. And it's like we want to put things into nice, tidy boxes. And so all the ones that fit nice and tidy in this box, we classify this way. And if they don't, we have a different category for them. And
Yeah, there's something
often
wrong
that
with them.
what's that?
There's something wrong with them, and how do we change it?
Exactly. And I was gonna say often that carries a deficit lens or it's stigmatized around that. But I personally know so many people, you include like who have ADHD and are superstars in so many areas. What have you seen from people that you've worked with or your family that highlights human potential with living with ADHD?
You mean what makes ADHDers amazing? Is that what you're
Let's
saying?
hear it. Yeah.
So many things, so many things. It's funny because I was talking to a couple the other day, and, they were saying, "Oh, my gosh, I can't believe you have ADHD." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It's so funny because I was talking to a couple the other day, and, they were saying, "Oh, my gosh, I can't believe you have ADHD." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It's so funny because I was talking to a couple the other day, and the husband has ADHD and the wife does not. And we were talking, and that causes a lot of problems in marriages often if it's misunderstood. And we were discussing all the things that were amazing about the husband that were seen as problems. And I'm like, we need to shift our lens on this. Like, these are superpowers. And I was going on and on, or not, I was going on and on, but like we were talking about that. And then afterwards I realized, oh, I have to reach out to the wife and make sure she realizes she's amazing, even though she doesn't have ADHD. Like,
Yeah, that's I
amazing, even though
love
you don't have
that.
ADHD, right?
Yeah, that's a beautiful frame. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because
Wow.
there's, the creativity, the ability to think out of the box. The thing that gets them in trouble because they're always thinking out of the box is one of their amazing gifts, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so many entrepreneurs and creators of inventions have had ADHD because they think out of the box. They're not, um, they do things their own way,
Mhm.
right? They're not stuck with what is. They're thinking about, well, what could be? And how do I do
Mhm.
that? No, I could do. So so many ADDers have so much zest
Mhm.
and so much passion. That's actually a really telltale sign of, well, a couple of telltale signs, but one is inconsistent skill sets. Like a child is way ahead of, like ahead of the normal bell curve, right? Way ahead in some things, but way behind in other things. Like my son was when he was I don't know, he was probably like 9. He loved dinosaurs. So we went to the Museum of Natural History in, I think it's called the Field Museum in Chicago. And we set him up with a um, paleontologist
Mhm.
that worked there. And he's having a conversation. He's like 9, where he brings us into the back room and he's having a conversation with this paleontologist. That was like a PhD level conversation. My husband and I are staying there. We had no idea what they were talking about. And the paleontologist is taking out fossils and handing them to my son. And I'm thinking, he's 9, he's going to drop it. Like, don't give him that. But they're having this like PhD level conversation. And at the same time, he didn't read yet. He couldn't read yet
Whoa.
because he had dyslexia. So he would
Wow.
listen to stuff and he'd watch all sorts of documentaries, and we had all sorts of things on tape. And like he absorbed in the way that his brain was ready to absorb it. He didn't read.
He was a sponge.
But
Oh my
he couldn't.
goodness.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that superpower.
these asynchronous skill sets are really confusing for parents. And to your point, we are in a very deficit-based society. So school, parents, adults are looking at the things that the kids can't do.
Mhm.
And talk about like myopic vision. They are missing all the magnificence of this child.
Mhm.
And they are causing the child to miss their own magnificence
Mm.
and just think about what they can't do.
What do you think would make either parenting or school better to highlight those things? Like what shift do we need to see in those institutions?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so much of the work that we do at MAPP, right? Like so much of shifting from that deficit lens to strengths lens. Like, what can they do? Yeah, this is a challenge, but like, what can they do? Let's do more of that. Give them opportunities for success. Um, Highlighting to them what's going well, like you did with the child. Like, tell me about when you were, when you persevered. Highlighting for them their strengths. So they know what's amazing about them and the things that they can do versus the things that they can't. And when did you run into something that was hard for you? The thing that you can't do. How did you do it? Because you did it. How exactly did you do that? What did you bring to that? That was amazing.
Mhm.
Right. And so it's really helping shifting our own lens about um, looking at what works instead of what doesn't and figuring out if something didn't, like, how do I use what I bring? Um, that's a huge piece right there. That is a huge piece.
Mhm.
Strengths
Mm.
focus. And it's not
Wow.
about ignoring things that are hard, but it's about using what you do really well, what's amazing about you to address the challenge.
Mhm. When we think about call it emotions and emotional regulation, do emotions show up differently for people who have that the hyperactive mind? Does that come up, and how do they regulate?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is actually another telltale sign of, well, ADHD is, I would describe it, Thomas Brown, actually. He's no longer alive. He just passed, but he was a brilliant psychologist and in the field of ADHD. And he describes it as it's really it's an issue of regulation. It's a challenge in regulation of your executive functions, which are housed in your thinking brain, right? So if you're challenged to regulate it, challenges in regulation of all our management systems. And our management systems are everything we do all the time, right? If I'm going to reach out and pick up a glass, right? I have to manage how fast my arm's going to go, how tightly I hold the glass so it doesn't slip out of my hand. When I pick it up and I put it back down, I can't slam it down. I have to manage my physicality, right? And that I have to manage my energy levels. I have to manage my sustaining my effort. Like I'm managing myself all the time. And all these skills of managing myself wear down the bandwidth, right? And so ADHD is a challenge in regulation of executive function skills,
Mm.
one of which is emotional regulation.
Mhm.
So many ADDers fly off the handle, right? They just have a huge reaction to things. Or some ADDers can't get excited about things. Like they under emote or over emote. They so it's a regulation issue, and emotional regulation is a very big piece. So when I would say my son could do 19 minutes of work, of math work, when he was done, he wasn't like, "Mom, I am spent." He was like, "Blah," you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
emotional regulation.
Mhm. Mm. You mentioned earlier how your one of your go-tos is breathing and connecting with other people, calling family, friends. What are some of the strategies that you give to your parents and to the kids in that regard to regulating their emotions?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the very first thing I do is self-compassion.
Mm.
Like, this is hard. Let me take the cues from my body because my body's telling me something.
Mhm.
If I'm starting to feel tense, or I'm starting to have shallow breathing, or my face is getting hot and red, right? What are my physiological cues? It's self-awareness about my physiological cues to tell me that my body is talking to me. My stomach hurts, or I feel a lump in my throat, or I can feel the blood in my veins because I'm like, oh my God. Notice how your body is speaking to you, and then give yourself some compassion, just like you would give a friend, like, oof, this is actually really hard for me right now. And it's okay. It's okay that this is hard. There's nothing wrong with that. It just is. And let me take some breaths. Let me take some breaths and use my polyvagal system, right? To calm that sympathetic response of fight or flight. So let me breathe in for 4 counts, and let me breathe out for 8. And let me breathe in and let me do that like 4 or 5 times. And then I can start to think a little bit more clearly. I'm going to start to notice by like breath 4, I start to, especially since I practiced it, but this is true for everyone. Your body starts to your body wants to relax, right? Your body doesn't want to be all tense. So you're cueing your body up to relax so you can think more clearly. So
Mm.
to answer that question, I would say notice when you start to feel agitated and activated. Don't wait until you're screaming at your child. Notice your body cues. And I would say the same thing to kids. And then give yourself some compassion. Like, oof, this is really hard right now.
Wow.
I, and then and then breathe, and you can start to think a little bit more clearly,
Mhm.
right? That's the beginning of the process.
Your voice and affect in explaining that helped to regulate me just in the moment. I think in co-regulating with other people, this is for people who are outside of, the person who is experiencing heavy emotion, is to embody what Joni just showed and to demonstrate it with her voice, with her tone, with her hand gestures. And I think that that helps and goes a long way because you were talking about self-compassion, but at the same time you were extending compassion to other people. I'm curious where the capacity that you possess, how did that develop over time? Like, were you always that compassionate and empathetic toward other folks, or has that been something that's grown through your journey?
Yeah. Well, before I answer that question, it's a great question. Before I answer it, I just wanted to, I'm so glad that you brought up co-regulation
Mhm.
because that's such a huge piece. Because if our children are behaving in a way that's telling us they need help, it means they need help regulating.
Yeah.
And in order to the help that we can give them, they need our regulation to co-regulate with. They need to borrow it from us until they can get it back themselves. In order for
I
them to
like that.
co-regulate, I have to be regulated.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
The screaming
parents,
at the child that's already frustrated is not helping the
that's
situation.
just two dysregulated people instead of one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really glad you brought that co-regulation up because it's essential
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
parents to help understand that, like, no, it's not about changing that.
Yeah.
It's about doing something differently so your child can access the skills they have.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I've always
And
been.
you
I
said
Well, I mean, I didn't always have the language. Clearly did not always have the language. I didn't always know what was going on. And a lot of times it was painful for me because I was just really um, sensitive to other people's feelings and um, yeah, it was really painful a lot of times. It's not, it's a hard way actually to grow up. Um, Noticing where people are in pain and having trouble and, and I didn't have, like I said, the language or the skill set really. I just noticed a lot and I would try and fix things and I can't fix things. That's really where my growth has come in, quite honestly.
Mhm.
Reggie, is that like I'm not a fixer like I can't fix it. And it's not my job to fix it.
Mhm.
It's it's how I can best help someone else, a child, a friend, someone I love, is to be with them and support them and nourish them with connection and reflection, really, so they can see their own strengths and gifts. So then they can help themselves and know
Mm.
that they can help themselves.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow. I'm thinking of folks who may feel that they have ADHD, but that has gone undiagnosed. Um, what would you say is the benefit of the diagnosis versus, I guess, just listening to your body and knowing what you need?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's um I wasn't diagnosed until I was in my 50s.
Wow.
So it's a pretty common story that adults, especially like now, because there's so much research coming out about ADHD now. And for the longest time, all the research was about little boys. Everything was focused on little boys. And it was believed that adults couldn't have it. It was
Mm.
a little boy childhood problem that you grew out of. None of that's true, right?
Wow.
There's a ton of research and none of it's true. So, um, the diagnosis is important. It's very important. One, for kids, it's important because it helps them get services in school, right? So that's important. And for insurance purposes, it's important. But beyond that, right, as an adult, for example, when I was diagnosed when my son was diagnosed. So he was like 16 or so, and I was like in my 50s. And when I realized, I had no idea I had ADHD. I was like the model of the undiagnosed ADDer because a lot of times girls are not diagnosed. They don't cause a problem in class. They are quiet. They this is true for a lot of ADDers actually, but they work 10 times as hard to do the thing. No one knows they're struggling. So there's a ton of anxiety and depression that's misdiagnosed. It diagnoses anxiety and depression instead of ADHD, right? So not understanding ADHD and my lived experience with it helps me understand my brain and helps me understand why what's hard is hard. And if I can understand why it's hard, then I can problem solve for it, right? I
Wow.
can figure out how to do it differently instead of doing the thing that doesn't work harder and doesn't work more and makes me feel worse and causes more overwhelm and more negative self-talk. This is working for everybody but me. And I am trying so hard and I'm being told I'm just not trying hard enough, right? Is demoralizing. And so understanding your brain, that's why it's important to get diagnosed.
Wow.
There are such big consequences to not knowing that you have ADHD for adults, especially like in the work world, for example, or in things that you're trying to accomplish, right? There are consequences in your marriage because there's a lot of consternation and strife and not understanding and arguments between spouses, one who has it, one who don't, because the spouse who doesn't have it thinks that the ADD is doing things on purpose to them, forgetting things because they don't pay attention and they don't care. And like all this, the whole story around it, that's just absolutely not true. Meanwhile, the ADDer is dealing with shame because they hurt somebody who they care about and why can't they remember to do that thing and pick things up on the way home? So there's a lot of shame. You just scratch the surface and there's a lot of shame. So my experience was, I went to college, I went to law school, I graduated in the top of my class in law school. I worked so hard. Then I started working in a law firm. And the things that the environment called on me to do did not fit into my strengths or how I do them. And so I was completely in overwhelm and I couldn't do the things. And here I was like this, I was smart. I could do the job, but I couldn't do the job because of the environment, because of the lots of things about the environment. One of which was it was not friendly and not connected. And one of my top strengths, right, is relational and connecting. And if I'm not in an environment that's nourishing me, I can't access my skill set very well. So if I'm in a hostile, what I feel is in a hostile environment, I'm working in a fight or flight state and I can't access my skill set. And that's what was happening to me. So I ended up with chronic fatigue and I ended up with anxiety and I ended up with depression and I was on medication for it. Like all of these things. I was being treated for anxiety and depression and I was not functioning very well, right? And I was trying so hard. And I would do this effort and that effort. I worked in a smaller law firm and I worked in this kind of law I was just trying so hard to keep moving forward, not knowing that I just kept bumping into the same wall because I didn't understand why what was happening to me was happening to me.
And you mentioned that you were diagnosed in your 50s. Is that a common thing for women to be diagnosed later or just misdiagnosed, undiagnosed?
Very common for women to be diagnosed later because so many women are diagnosed when their kids are diagnosed. First of all, ADHD is highly inherited, right?
Hmm.
So if your kid has it, chances are the mom or dad have it, or the
Interesting.
grandparent, or the aunt or uncle. Like it's in the family. So, yeah. So what was the question? What'd you ask?
Yeah, just if you were diagnosed late, is that common amongst women.
Yeah, it's very common because women don't cause a problem. Like the way a lot of times we're socialized to function is to get smaller and get quieter and not make a fuss. If I'm, yeah. So we don't disrupt our
Mm,
environment.
mhm,
And the people that get attention are the disruptors,
mm,
right?
mm.
Many times women are not the
A-
disruptors.
and
So
to
they're
point back to something you said earlier, the disruption of the environment, the external environment, right?
exactly
So the boys may disrupt the external while the girls are internally having a
disrupting.
disruption of
Yeah,
their
they're
environment.
disrupting their internal environment. The
Mm,
disruption is disrupting their
mm.
internal environment.
Wow.
Yeah, and causing a ton of negative self-talk often, a ton of lack of confidence. And this is where the anxiety and the depression comes in because of massive amounts of negative self-talk.
Mhm.
So it's this internal disruption versus external disruption.
Wow. I think speaking from the experience of living with ADHD and the way that you're able to communicate that, it will help people feel, and it does help people feel extremely seen in their experience because the words that you use and the way that you phrase those, I'm thinking about certain people in my life and I'm like, oh, they have to listen to this so that they don't feel so isolated from the world that they live in because they have experiences in the ways that you've described them. So thank you for
Yeah,
that. That's a
yeah,
gift. That's a true
sure,
gift.
sure. When I first learned I had ADHD, I did all my research around my son. Like I was trying to help my son. But when I realized that I had it, and then I did more research around it, it felt like all the puzzle pieces of my life finally fit together in a picture that made sense. My life finally made sense to me. And that was so empowering. And at first, there's a whole big grief around it. Honestly, there's this whole process of emotions that flood in. And it starts with grief because um, all these missed opportunities, things that were so hard, things I didn't do, things I couldn't do, not knowing why, feeling like not living up to expectations, right? And not knowing why, and just all the negative messaging, all of this stuff, it helps all the pieces come into place. And you're like, oh, okay. Now it makes sense. And now I can move forward in a way
Mm,
that supports me.
yes. Ah, that's so beautiful. Joni, we could talk for hours and hours and you have so much knowledge, even beyond ADHD. Like you're just a wealth of knowledge and I
Oh, thanks, Greg.
appreciate you. But before we close out, I want to do another segment. It's a fill in the blank. And so I'm gonna think of some things and you just let me know the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Um The biggest misconception about ADHD is blank.
That it's not being able to pay attention,
Good parenting with someone who has ADHD means blank.
listening and believing them.
Self compassion looks like blank.
This is hard.
And if I could give any advice to someone out there who has ADHD, it would be blank.
Learn more about it, educate yourself, understand how your brain works, and have self compassion.
Mm.
And you're amazing. You're amazing. So many gifts.
So many gifts. Ah, this was a gift. Joni, you are a gift to the MAPP program, to the University of Pennsylvania, to your family, to this world, to my life. And I appreciate you for sharing so much of your gift with us all. If there are folks out there who want to get in touch with you, who want to learn more, what are some resources? What are some places they can reach you?
Yeah. So you can email me at corn, CORN _ Joni at yahoo.com. And I always do a free consultation with somebody. And, just to give people an idea of how I work and how we work and what they can learn and what coaching even looks like or feels like. Yeah, I would say that's, and I can give a list of resources for people to start. There's a lot of information out there about ADHD. Some of it's good and some of it's not so good. So a reliable source of reading material to learn and get valid information about ADHD. And I just want to add that, Reg, for all those things that you just beautiful, kind, lovely things that you just said about me, right back at you,
Mm.
because I just think you're absolutely amazing. The work that you do, and especially in schools with young kids and the books, and like, it's got to start. That's where it's got to start. If we're going to make things different, if we're going to give people this knowledge, it has to start with kids so
Mhm.
they can grow into adults that are wise and kind and compassionate and thoughtful and insightful, right? And connected and connecting. So thank you for going right where you need to go, like right to the core of where it
Yes.
needs to start. It's
Yes, I appreciate that, and I receive that, and we're doing the work together, and we continue to do it, and making sure that individuals feel seen, they feel heard, and they feel valued, and that's what I'm taking away from this episode is to be more curious, to be more compassionate, and to understand other people's journey or attempt to. And
yeah,
that is a big part of it all because we are all trying as hard as we can and we need a little help along the way.
yeah,
Mm,
we're all trying. Yeah.
yeah.
And I say to parents too, I'm like, you know, your kids are people. They're just smaller, but
Hmm.
they're people. They're just like
Yes.
you, exactly like you. How do you
Mm,
want to be treated?
mm, that's real. Dang, that's real. Joni, with all the things that you could be doing and all the places you could be, I appreciate you being here with me, embracing vulnerability.
Well, Reggie, thank you for asking me to be here, and super excited to have this conversation with you. I love talking to you.
Same.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of Vulnerability Muscle. If you've enjoyed these conversations around vulnerability, please consider leaving a review. Your feedback not only motivates us to continue to do the work that we do, but it allows other people to witness the power of vulnerability. Share your thoughts on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And don't forget to spread the word. You can follow us at Vulnerability Muscle on Instagram and me personally at Reggie D Ford across all platforms. Visit vulnerabilitymuscle.com for additional resources and support. And remember, embracing vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It is the source of your greatest strength. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but most workouts are. So keep flexing that vulnerability muscle.